Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this It's Thursday, Let's Talk session on social and emotional learning, a really important topic with our schools and our families, especially coming out of what we've gone through these past 2 years. My name is Carolyn McCarty. I am the president of the Illinois PTA, and I will be monitoring this call tonight and helping these ladies out. But I want to introduce you to the two panel ladies that will be presenting our presentation tonight. It is Jeanne Osgood. Jeanne, if you could give us a wave there, thank you. Jeanne's community involvement, advocacy, and career has been focused on education, including the arts, youth development, and socio-emotional learning since settling in Chicago suburbs in the 1990s with her husband and family. She has been a consultant to the area schools and districts implementing SEL, worked with collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning, CASEL. Many of you may have heard of CASEL, especially in the Chicago area, because I know I have several times worked with them on different projects, and participated on statewide committees of the Illinois Children Mental Health Partnership, another great organization that I love. In 2009, she received a Those Who Excel Award from the Illinois State Board of Education, ISB, for her leadership in community consolidated school district 181 to initiate and support SEL system-wide. As a board member of the District 181 Foundation, she developed its programming for parents. Jeanne's experience as a parent involved with her now growing children, so her adult children's schools, parent groups, and various community resources of the arts, service organizations, and literacy education demonstrates her commitment to supporting the next generation of families around us and them. Currently, she is the VP of the Board of Candor Health Education, another great organization. Jeanne, you're everywhere.
I'm glad you know Candor.
Puberty, sex, and drug education integrated with social and emotional learning for students, families, and the community across Northern Illinois. Prior to her work in K-12 schools, Jeanne taught at the Art Institute of Chicago Area Museums and DePaul University School of New Learning. She got her bachelor's degree at the University of Michigan and her master's degree at the University of Chicago. We welcome you, Jeanne, and we're so happy to have you with us. Also on our panel tonight is Lisa Ward. Lisa has been working in education for over 30 years, and some of you may actually recognize Lisa. She's done some work for us at our convention, and she's also done work in Southern Illinois for Illinois PTA for the Piecing It All Together mental health conference that is held annually down in Southern Illinois. But she's been working in education for over 30 years, mostly as a special education teacher. She has a degree in early childhood education, interdisciplinary education pre-K through 8, special education, and instructional technology. The last 9 years, she has been a specialist for learning support, grant funded by ISB. During this time, Lisa has developed a multitude of resources to support implementation of the socio-emotional learning standards that are used in classrooms today and all across Illinois. Lisa has presented at hundreds of districts across the state, statewide conferences, including Illinois PTA, and national conferences in the area of SEL, technology, and climate culture within the school. Currently, she works at Southwest Illinois College. I can't even say it because we call it SWIC where I live. Southwestern Illinois College as a faculty instructor technology manager, and manages her own education consulting company, Educator UP. Lisa lives in Belleville with her husband, Don. He's retired from the Air Force, and their dog, Sissy. Both of her adult children, I believe CJ and Ben must both be adults by now.
Oh, yes.
Have homes in Edwardsville, Illinois. She spends her free time with the grandchildren, biking, softball, and sometimes going out and doing just a little exploring. So welcome, Lisa. But before we get started, and I turn this completely over to these ladies and their expertise, I want to just put down a few ground rules so everybody knows where we're at. I'd like everybody to please mute their phones. If you have a question during the 40-minute presentation, if you would please enter it in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat and we'll ask these lovely ladies for their responses to your questions once they're finished with their presentation. We are recording this, so we will have it available on our website within the next 3 to 4 days. If you missed something or you want to go back and watch them again, you can. We will also be sending out an email tomorrow morning. I say tomorrow morning, but it might be early afternoon. It depends. Sometimes I get distracted with something else, but and we will include with that the copy of the slide deck of the presentation they're presenting tonight and their emails. If after you get off the call tonight and you come up with another question you would like to ask them, you can contact them directly. They'd be more than happy to answer your questions. So ladies, I don't think I missed anything there in what we wanted to get done as far as housekeeping goes. So Lisa, I will turn the screen over to you and let you ladies go to it. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Awesome. Okay, Jeanne, are you ready?
I am.
Okay, let's go to the first one.
So thank you very much for the introduction, Carolyn. And Lisa and I will be toggling back and forth between some of the slides, just putting together the different kinds of experience that both of us have in the field of social and emotional learning. But first, to get all of us from top to bottom of the state thinking about things kind of in a big picture way, I wanted to start with a little exercise to invite you to think, as parents now, what would you identify as the most important knowledge, skills, and qualities that your kids will need to have to live successful and independent lives? And because we're short on time, I've just added some ideas that this is a common question. Many of you have probably heard it before, but these are the kinds of things that parents typically mention in response to this particular question. They want their kids to get along with others, have caring and empathy for them, be able to reach the goals that they've set for themselves, be able to problem solve, develop a talent, persist, be able to hang in there when challenges present themselves, have good relationships, leadership skills, a healthy lifestyle, caring friends, self-confidence to follow through with their dreams, a positive attitude towards life, be good citizens, and to have resilience, to be able to bounce back from things. You might have come up with other ideas as you were listening to me. You're welcome to jump in and add those in the chat if you'd like. This is sort of an open-ended kind of question, but I think you can see the types of things that typically parents respond with to this kind of a question. And it's interesting that we don't often find parents saying, well, I want my child to be really good at math, let's say. While math is important and literacy and so on, these are important skills, that they aren't really the solitary skills that most parents dream of their children as having. Rather, it's that they want their kids to have a sense of wholeness, to have agency over themselves, to be resilient, to have positive relationships, to be sound characters with essential life skills. And the next slide. And the reason that I prefaced our discussion about SEL, or social emotional learning, with this is because social and emotional learning really addresses these goals that adults have for children and that adults have for adults, frankly, in a fundamental and a systematic way. So what is SEL, or social and emotional learning? And I would gather that most of you on the call tonight are very aware of this acronym. It's been around for a long time in the state of Illinois. And there are a number of common definitions for it. A simple one that I use for our discussion tonight is that it's a process and a framework that address the personal, social, and decision-making skills of children from pre-K through grade 12. This is not to say that these are not important skills for adults at the same time. And I, in fact, hope by the end of this that you realize that our social emotional skills as adults make a huge impact on the children that we are raising or teaching around us. So to give it sort of a simple way of thinking, because I know most of us have a hard time with more than 3 things, remembering what they are, the state of Illinois organized them into 3 goal areas. And I would say, if you're looking at the image on the right of the screen, goal 1, or the red area of that wheel, are self skills. And you could call these intrapersonal skills. Goal 2 are social skills or interpersonal skills. And goal 3 are decision-making skills. And I think if you think back to the kinds of things that were on the first slide, you can maybe imagine how some of these things are related. I think resilience is a great example, being able to follow through to a goal. And we'll be talking about that in terms of social self-management and self-awareness. Having a sense of yourself as a good citizen, or having yourself a sense of yourself as a leader, for instance. These are all things that depend on the 3 large goal areas that are represented on the right side of the screen. And I would say also, another way of thinking about it is that it's having an awareness of your own feelings, your own strengths and challenges, and having self-control, self-management. And that's the word that is used in the red panel on the right. Having empathy and compassion for others, that fits into social things. And then making healthy, constructive, and ethical decisions, that falls into decision making. So each time I sort of go around the circle, I wrap a few more words into it, but I hope that that's helping to sort of elaborate your thinking about what these goals actually are and what the skills entail. SEL is for all students, teachers, parents, and communities, in fact. And I think it's important that we see it within a context. It is most effectively taught in a safe and caring environment from adults who have a supportive relationship with the students. And undergirding SEL completely is the concept of relationships. Relationships between teachers and students, families, and within the community. In many ways, I would say that SEL helps to build a bridge between school and home because of the shared goals for student success that it fosters. And the next slide, Lisa. So where did this all come from? I will be interested here at the end how many of you find this to be a new concept. Interestingly, it's not new in the state of Illinois, and it has actually been around long enough to be related to policy in our state. That goes back to the Illinois Children's Mental Health Act of 2003. And then that legislation led to the creation of the SEL standards in the following year. And this policy requires Illinois school districts to implement SEL policies and for schools to address the social and emotional development of all students. It's what we call a universal intervention. Interestingly, though, it is also an unfunded mandate, as many are. And so this leaves a lot up to individual schools and districts to find their resources. And then it also has related to the existence of very helpful not-for-profit organizations and other educational organizations that have helped a great many school districts do this work. Next slide.
Okay, so what are the standards that came up with through this legislation and all that? So we already talked at goal 1 and 2 and 3 with that wheel. This is how it's defined within the state of Illinois. So goal 1 has 3 standards underneath it. 1A is identify and manage one's emotions and behavior. Sounds simple enough, not as simple as we might think. Standard 1B, recognizing personal qualities and external supports. Can our students know where to reach out for when they need assistance with something? Be they a 4-year-old or someone that's a junior in high school? Are they aware of their external supports? 1C, demonstrating skills related to achieving those personal and academic goals. Can they set goals, achieve them, and know what happens when they don't achieve them? What was the hindrance and so forth? Goal 2, social awareness. This is feeling and perspective of others. That's where you build that empathy. Individual group similarities and differences. That's understanding and the compassion in that. Using communication and social skills. A lot of our students sometimes, and adults as well, you have to learn how to communicate with others and accept communications for others. And that's all underneath goal 2. I'm going to skip to goal 3 and just talk about consideration of ethical, safety, societal factors, things like that when you're making a decision. It's not just pick A or B. What is A, what is B, and why am I choosing between the two? That sort of thing. We have to teach those skills to be able to make those decisions. Apply those decision-making skills to deal with responsibly with academic, social situations, things of that nature, and then to contribute to the well-being of one's school and our community. Helping our students come up with those skills on how to help with things. You see lots of schools, they'll do a food drive or they're doing a book drive or things like that. That's all supporting goal 3 in there, is being part of your community. Good thing to note here, these are the social skills for pre-K through 12th grade. They're also adult social emotional skills. Adults should have all of these same skills as well, but this skill set is for pre-K through 12th grade. It's an overarching concepts. It does get broken down further than that, and we'll get into those benchmarks, which are grade banded, and then into some descriptors, which are wonderful building stages, but we'll get in that to a little bit more. So this is what SEL is. These are the standards. So what SEL is not. So something you need to know, the SEL is not therapy. This is not a discipline policy. And this is one of the biggest ones in schools. Your SEL may have pieces within your discipline policy, but it is not the discipline policy. It is not behavior charts and things like that. That is not SEL. Okay. It's also not critical race theory, health education, counseling. Those are not pieces. That's not what SEL is. So if a district is bringing in some SEL supports and things of that nature, it may have something to do with a topic that might be considered counseling. Maybe we're talking about empathy and understanding and things of that nature, but that's not what it specifically is. That's not what it's set for. This is for everyday abilities of the teacher, just to help to support these 3 goals within the classroom, within the whole school, even riding the bus, things of that nature. So how do schools assess the SEL skills in students? This is the biggest question of SEL in every district, everywhere, nationwide, because it's not as if math and reading, they can come in and they can take a math test and you know where they are within math. If they're struggling with subtraction, but they've got addition, you know where to start. Things of that nature. You can assess their reading levels and be able to bring their reading levels and bring the reading content to them at their level and continue on. So how do schools do this? So there's lots of resources out there, and many schools will grab onto lots of different programs. There's free programs and paid programs and that will help with it. But know that the surveys that parents and students are doing help with the SEL. It helps them understand the climate and culture going on in the school, where the students may feel unsafe. The 5 essentials was out for in that 3rd grade through the school districts. That those surveys help the district, the school, the teacher understand where they may have some struggles as students, as families. Observational data is the biggest piece there. What is the student showing in those 3 goals? Where are they struggling in those 3 goals? This is difficult sometimes for teachers to look at. So I put a resource here that I created to help. It's the stages of descriptors of SEL standards. So there are 10 pages of this, because each standard, notice this one says standard 1A. So under identifying and managing one's emotions, you go through set stages. Exploring, developing, and building, that's for pre-K. Okay, and it shows you what should be happening to see what stage they're in. Then we start with stage A, which is kindergarten and 1st grade, and it goes all the way to stage J in the document. Stage J is a graduating senior. They should be able to do all of these things when it's managing their emotions. So some of these have 6 or 7 things that should be going on in that stage. Observationally, teachers can observe a student, and if they're doing more than they're not doing, that's what I like to say. So if there's 6 things in stage B and they're doing 4 and 5 of them, they're solidly in stage B. go and take a look at stage C and see where they are. This is how you can find out what stage they're in. Now, there's with the document of this, if you'll get the link to click and download it, it will tell you what grades each of those stages are. But I like to give this for parents because you don't really want to know the grades necessarily. It's nice to know that, but I like to look and observe a student based upon what I'm seeing in stages, not how old they are. Because even if you have a student that should be in stage E, but they cannot manage their emotions and they're having a serious struggle with that, and they are solidly in B, you need to understand that they have to then learn how to get through C and D before they arrive at E. And this helps with that progression through the stages. It's just like with math. I like to talk to parents and teachers about it. If a student is struggling with addition and subtraction, you cannot expect them to do division. It's not going to happen. So when you're expecting your student to manage their behavior at a 5th grade level, which would be stage E, and they're 5th graders, but they're at stage B in their development of that skill, you have to meet them where they're at and help them get up to it. These stages will give you descriptions of what it looks like, and the descriptions will help you support them at home, in school, in the classes, things of that nature. So I strongly recommend taking a peek at the descriptors to help with that. Teachers can use this to help to assess. And that's a key component of this, is to assess it. So you'll be able to link and download that with the PDF. Okay. So resources for schools and families, there are so many out there. We could have filled 20 of these slides easily. But we picked some top 3 here. CASEL has an abundance of resources. They also have district resources in there. You can go to their district hosted pages, and there's individual resources that have been gathered. You can look for a topic and it's going to give you resources, parent, school district, teacher, many different ways in which to look at that. Childhoodresilience.org Reach is an Illinois program going on right now, and that's a resource available for free to get some things in there. Navigating SEL from Inside Out. This is a Harvard report that talks about many of the different programs, from free to paid programs to support SEL in the districts. And it gives you a very good analysis of what those programs have involved in it, how successful they are they hands-on? A very deep dive by Harvard University did this one. So these are our 3 favorite. There are many, many more. There are lots of free programs out there for SEL, keeping in mind that it is embedded throughout the school, not just a program. Okay.
And I would just jump in there regarding programs and putting a spotlight on CASEL. CASEL has done studies to review a great many programs. What they're looking for is the evidence base of the outcomes from the programs. And just as Lisa said, there are dozens and dozens of programs out there that a school can buy. All of them are not evidence-based. And that's where I think a school, and if you're a parent who's a part of a team that's reviewing programs or reviewing something that the school is bringing in or considering to bring in, should pay some attention. And then it is also the concern that a school can actually follow a program in its entirety and use it so that the evidence base of it is a possibility within a separate school building. So it's a rather complicated process to do the implementation. It takes usually 2 to 4 years to fully implement SEL in an individual school building. So while we were for a bit discussing SEL in schools, and I love the resource that Lisa shared for parents and teachers to look at those developmental guidelines for kids' abilities and what they can show you of these skills, we wanted to finish our comments tonight by looking at SEL at home, because it is very, very clear that parents have a huge role in the SEL development of their children in their own homes. And I think it's very typical that we say that parents are our children's first teachers, but we are also the key partners with our children's schools. And the more that we partner with schools, I think the more success a district or a school has in implementing the work and in getting positive outcomes when they are assessing the children's development. At home, we serve, though not as teachers, but I think that it's better to call us models, mentors, and monitors for our children. Learning about social and emotional learning for parents can provide us with a clear framework with which we can support our children's learning and wellness. So as we discuss the social emotional skills, you might want to think about your own child, his or her strengths and areas that need growth. Does your child, for instance, become easily frustrated, lose patience, or lack persistence? You may find that social and emotional learning can help you focus on certain skill areas that will help your child make some progress in these areas. Remember, these are life skills. These are things that we learn through time and with practice. So what I've done with the last 3 slides, and I know there are a lot of words here, but I kept them within each of the goal areas that we identified at the outset. The first slide here is those large goals of self-awareness and self-management, recognizing one's own emotions and values, as well as one's strengths and challenges, and managing those emotions and behaviors to achieve one's goals. Well, what can you do at home? One of the most important things that parents can do with their own children is to name that feeling. And I'm not talking about the kid's feelings so much as your own. Help your child learn to articulate his feelings by naming yours, and go beyond the common words for feelings like happy, sad, glad, mad, and scared, and let your child know when you feel frustrated or annoyed or content or satisfied, worried or stressed. So in other words, develop some articulateness about your own feelings and use those in your conversation with your child. Describe how you experience a feeling. Sometimes when we're worried about something, we feel a bit tight. Our hands are clenched, as an example. And you can talk about that and how you need to relieve some of your stress by doing different things, like maybe taking a deep breath. These are just the kinds of conversations that we can have that help our children start to identify these feelings and build their own skills for them. One thing that we often do with families in schools is to talk about using I statements, and families at home using I statements. And this is that idea of saying something like, I feel frustrated when you don't listen to me because you are on your tablet. I would like it if you would stop looking at your device when I'm talking to you. And so that when you start with an I statement, I imagine many of you know this, it takes a bit of the pressure. It's not an accusation, but it's more holding it into yourself. I've had a number of parents tell me that when the I statement model that is sent home from the school, this is usually a PDF printout, is put on their refrigerator, they are so impressed with how their spouse suddenly pays attention to communicating in a rather different way. The other thing you can do as a parent in this first skill set area is to model your own self-control, pausing before you act. Take that deep breath. Acknowledge that you feel a little bit upset. You need to calm down, and give your child opportunities to wait for something if that is an issue for your child. I always say, let your child know that you are paying attention to him, that you will help him as soon as you can, and it won't be long, but let your child experience what it feels like to wait. We all know in school, this is something that's very difficult when you've got a classroom of 20 or 30 children and kids have to wait. Well, they have to do it at home too. And we can help by letting them know that their needs will soon be tended to, not immediately. And in those moments, they will need to wait. And I would also say, share your thinking process about goals and projects that you have. Think out loud. Explain your steps and the possible consequences or the choices that you need to make. This is all really helpful for a child to hear an adult modeling. Next one, Lisa. So this is the second set of skills: social awareness and relationship skills, showing understanding and empathy and so on, forming positive relationships, working with groups, and dealing effectively with conflict. Now, there are many things on this slide. This is why we wanted to make sure that you would all get it as a PDF so you can refer to it. You don't need to scribble things down, but mainly remembering that your relationship with your child is of the utmost importance. Always affirm their feelings with empathy and acceptance, rather than saying something like, oh, you don't need to feel like that, or you shouldn't feel like that. Listen to them, take the time. In fact, try and listen daily to each of your children and learn about their day and the things that are important to them. Validate their feelings and give them practice communicating with you. Use books, movies, the news, to have family conversations about how people relate to one another and the challenges that other people might feel. Talk about what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. This is especially helpful at home when there's an argument going on and some kind of a compromise is needed. Recognize that, and model your healthy relationships with your spouse, your friends, and your family. Communicate thoughtfully. Listen to others. Show your child that this is how you relate to other people as well. Teach your children skills for face-to-face communication, whether it's on the phone, online, and of course, the online communications have taken on a whole dimension with the younger generation, but it's up to us as parents to help our kids use devices as well as face-to-face communications very appropriately. And be aware that misunderstandings can come up because of the use of technology. Help your children understand these situations before they feel that they need to accuse somebody of harming them directly. And also show your child how to apologize by doing it yourself when it's appropriate. We all make mistakes sometimes. And I have found too that problem solving techniques, and they're very, quite concrete, can help a lot. And this is something, let's say your child comes home and complains that he or she has been bullied. We'll talk through how he or she feels about it, identify the problem in the situation, brainstorm some solutions for it, consider the consequences to each solution, and then pick a solution and try it the next day. See if it works. If it doesn't work, try another solution. This is really how most of us go through life, adjusting to things, creatively coming up with solutions to problems and moving forward. And it's great when we can show that example to our children. And the next one. The third goal area is responsible decision making. And as we've been saying, this is about making ethical, constructive choices about our personal and social behavior. And I would say before all of this, remember that this is the one that has to do with your actions. Your actions trump your words if they don't align. And we all know how good our kids are at seeing that we don't do what we say. So think about first how you are managing responsible decision making, and then find ways to practice it at home. Always thinking about decisions based on respect, positive social norms, and the consequences to our actions. I think the metaphor of ripples on a pond is very, very useful for kids in talking about how their choices affect other people around them, and empower them to affect positive change by finding ways to contribute. Lisa was speaking about this in schools, and most of our schools do have opportunities for children to participate in caring kinds of activities. It's also up to us as parents to be a part of these organizations and these activities, whether it's at home, in the neighborhood, in your family, or in a religious organization, so that children have actual experience in doing these things. And I always like to talk about the law a little bit. You don't always have to agree with the law, but the law is the law. And so this is, we all know our teenagers will push limits on this, but this is our opportunity to show our children how we live within the law and why it's very important. Is starting with seatbelts when they're little, texting when they're driving, alcohol use when they're older. With young children, it's great to give them a few choices, and even teenagers for that matter, and see if they make good decisions with those choices, and then we can expand the choices. Vice versa, if some poor choices have been made, we all know how to reel it back in and limit their options until they're able to live up to it. This is very similar to what Lisa was talking about in terms of assessing children, seeing where their skill area is, not going forward too fast, but really being observant and noticing what they are capable of making decisions about. And finally, as any parent of a teenager will know, their brain development is what it is, and it is limited by the growth of their brain, which we know takes until their mid-20s, and that they are easily compromised by social pressure. This is when monitoring our adolescents' activities is very important, knowing the parents of the friends that our children have, and staying in touch with that circle of parent friends as well. I think all in all, SEL is very, very empowering for parents and families, as well as for teachers. It gives teachers a whole set of skills to develop to support children's learning in school. And we as parents who are working in partnership with schools want the very same thing. And this structure of social and emotional learning gives us a very, I think, simple, straightforward framework to think about when we are considering our children's growth and development and wellness. And the final slide, we're going to toss it back to you. We realize this is a lot of information, and we are pretty much on time. We wanted to save 20 minutes or so in the end for your questions and concerns that you have about this. So I guess I'm turning it back to Carolyn. Is that right at this point?
Yes, we have some really good questions out here. So I'm going to throw the questions out, and whichever one of you ladies would like to answer it, or both of you want to throw some answers back out. I'm going to go through. I'm going to try to group together a couple of these questions that have been brought up. And I'm going to start with the very first question. I actually had the first question. Before anybody typed anything in, I wrote a question down. I just want to ask the question real quick.
Mhm.
In one of the early slides, I think it was the slide, Lisa, you were looking at. It was regarding how can schools or parents assess SEL skills in a student? And one of the things you said was to survey students and families. Is there a standard survey out there that ISB is utilizing, or any other districts are utilizing, that could be used to help a family, assess where their students are within the process?
There's not a specific one for identifying a student. The 5 Essential Survey that's out, that's utilized, and districts can create their own as well. They're not tied directly to the student. It's more of a climate and culture for within the school. They would know by grade level as well. So K-2 are seeming to have this bit of an issue. You can look at the 5 essentials for any school district that's done it and see where the students feel safest or not as safe, or things of that nature, are not challenged maybe, or are challenged too much, and things like that. You can look at the 5 essential data for that for any school in the state. The district can do individual ones as well. Sometimes teachers just do a check-in every morning to see how the kids are doing. And I usually do the 1 to 5. How are you feeling today? Are you a 1 or 5? Where are you at? And if you're a 1 or a 5, why are you in a 1 or a 5? I'm in a 1 because I didn't sleep last night. I am in a 5 because I cannot wait for the science experiment today. Those are just daily check-ins and so forth. So as far as being able to look up the data, it depends upon what the district is doing to do the surveys. Some of them they know that there's, maybe it's a high school that's having a lot of absentee issues going on. They may do a survey with their students to say, hey, where are you feeling with this? Where are you at? There's an abundance of survey questions along this line from different companies that they can utilize as well. Panorama does a great process of that, and all of their questions are open source. So anybody could use those questions to check in, things like that. So there's quite a few options and things of that nature for the surveys.
Thank you. So some of the questions I'm going to group together because I started with that one, and then I saw some questions that came out along that line. as to then how do parents learn about, how are SEL assessments reported to parents, and how can parents interpret those? Is it reported out? I don't think it's like you get a grade, as
No.
you stated.
It's not, unless, believe it or not, if you are a school district that does standards-based grading, almost all the standard-based grading report cards have a component on, I don't want to say behavior because it's not behavior, but do they come to class prepared? How well are they doing? And it has a social emotional component on just about every standards-based grading report card I've seen in the state. And that's because your academic grade is kind of separate from your social emotional skill level as well. So there is no other, you can't pull up a 5 essentials and look at John Smith in the 3rd grade to see where he's at in social emotional. That's not a thing.
So you wouldn't be able to see that he's in stage E.
No.
Right.
No.
Okay.
This descriptor is just something to kind of look at and go, oh, I see them do all of that. Or they don't do any of that. So it just gives you a guide, I guess.
Okay, so then the answer to that question leads right into another question that I see out here is, how can we as PTA board members either at the local level or at a council level or a district-wide level help address or spread good information to parents and guardians that feel that the SEL curriculum detracts from the core base learning of math, literature, science, etc., especially since educators spend a lot of time redirecting through these models? This is a question that, has been brought up many times in this individual's person's area.
Okay, it does not, social emotional curriculum, first off, social emotional learning is not a curriculum. They may have a component where they're doing second step or something of that nature, but if they do the whole piece, it's an everyday occurrence everywhere throughout the school. It's not a curriculum. Teachers can incorporate what that second step philosophy is in that program with everything they're doing. They make sure that they do maybe a circle in the morning to check in with students on how they're feeling and what they're thinking about. If they have 2 students that are having an argument, you do a different way that you help them solve that, and so forth. The curriculum, if they're doing language arts and they've got a story for the week, that story can be talked about in a social emotional aspect. How are these 2 characters getting along? Well, there's goal 2. How did they make the decision to return the truck, or something of that nature? Well, there's goal 3. So we're talking about the books and literature and things like that. Math as well. Math discourse conversation is where you're talking math and you're talking through the problem with a group of students. So you're managing your own emotions because you're working with a group of peers. You're working together with a group of peers. There's goal 2. And you're coming to a conclusion as to what the result of that math problem is. There's goal 3. So just by working through a math problem as a group of students, you're supporting goal 1, 2, and 3. So the teacher is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in on math. I mean, one of the issues with math is having that ability to persist. And I think apart from working with peers, the teacher's role is often to really provide that kind of encouragement and maybe even say, right about now, if you're struggling with this, you may want to step back and take a breath and then refocus yourself. So building those attentional efforts so that children can actually hang in there. I met recently with one of our assistant superintendents about SEL, and I was asking, what have been some of the issues you've dealt with since school has resumed to a more typical school day? And she said the 2 biggest are stamina and focus. Keeping the kids who were able to be home on their computer screens, during which time they were often given breaks through the day. But now that they're back in the school classroom, keeping them focused through the duration of the lesson, that has been a challenge. Well, that takes the teacher to actually sort of prepare the students for what they're going to be doing. Whether it's math, writing, it doesn't matter. These are all such broad goals. I see this as really the foundation of learning.
So,
And you need to have the some SEL components within your classroom for everything else to be successful. If you don't have a piece in your class where students are working together in a structured type of a setup, you can't build that goal too on how to recognize that somebody has a different opinion than you do, and understanding diversity and so forth within your school. If you don't, as a teacher, do group work or have things of that nature. So SEL, it's not a standalone curriculum by any means. It's not just teachers. It's not just counselors. It's not just, it's the school secretaries. It's in the lunchroom. It's in the hallways. It's everywhere. It's just, it needs to be everything. Has to have an understanding of what these skills are and how in the role that I am in the school is going to support those students to achieve those skills.
so with that explanation and that very thorough explanation and answer to that question, there one other thing. So this SAL is not an attempt to replace counselors and social workers, social psychologists, nurses, or special education ed.
No, never.
This is to be built into all those components, all those different people that would be interacting with the children. They should all be practicing and demonstrating at, working towards those three goals.
And many teachers, when I do SEL training with teachers, I'll start telling them ways to incorporate for managing the emotions. And I'll talk about a calm down corner and they go, oh, I have one of those. They're already doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. When I say, well, do you sit around and do you have a circle when you come in from recess and go, this is what we're going to do next. And what do you think about this? And you talk around the circle of what's going on. And they go, well, yeah, I do that. That's SEL. A lot of their lessons and their activities in every content area have a piece of SEL in it and they didn't even realize it. And if you focus on those pieces and then put them everywhere else, it brings the content more to life as well. You can have in a history in high school, they could be each person pick a person to study and do a report on and give a PowerPoint, and they learn that one person for that 2 weeks and that's it. But if you get a group of 3 students together and they can decide how they want to show what this person did or what the accomplishments were, and they work together to build something, a video, a presentation of some nature, not only have you built in the understanding of who this famous person was, they've also learned to work collaboratively with each other, even though they may not see things the same way. And that builds their skills so that when they're an adult and they're at a workplace and they have to get along with everybody there, they've learned how to do that skill in high school.
So one of the things you say, this is in addition, we have our math grade, we have our literature grade, we have our French grade, whatever courses we may be taking. But can academic grades can the academic grades be tied to SEL grades though? Isn't that true in a sense that if a student isn't doing well in a particular subject, it could create an emotional response such as depression or feelings of failure or worthlessness? How is this then addressed and how can it be?
Yeah, and it really is. There's a big discussion in there, and this is where the standards-based grading comes in a lot with it. Because your academic ability is graded A, B's, and C's, or 4s, 3s, and 2s, and 1s with standard-based grading. And then your social skills, your ability to manage your time and turn your homework in and all of that is in a separate grade. Now that's just standard-based grading. That's not the standard grading that most of us grew up with. So if you didn't turn your assignments, you got a 0. And it didn't really show what you've achieved academically. It showed what you didn't turn in. Okay, so they are tied together most definitely. They don't give SEL a grade for anything. And even the standards-based grading, it's not at the same grade as their English grade or their math grade. It just shows that, yes, they are very good at keeping things on time. They're always in attendance. They're like a checkbox. It's not a grade. So keep that in mind. And each district is allowed on how their grading scale is done and so forth. But yes, that's why most districts that I've worked with, they have a group of teachers that are monitoring grades and all that. When you start to see the grades drop, they bring in some interventions. And some of those interventions are those social emotional interventions. If it's a student that's having a hard time getting to school, that's a social emotional issue going on. That's where that depression and everything else can kick in as well. There's a lot more going on than the ability to complete the algebra that's there. So when the grades do start to drop, they have to look at the whole child as to what's going on, not the inability to handle algebra or the language arts class or anything like that, or just getting to first grade. So yeah, grades tie to SEL, most definitely. Those that are struggling with grades can be very much struggling with an SEL component in their life, definitely.
So earlier in this presentation, a report card was mentioned that, and I didn't write down the name and I wish I had, but that mentioned the, you had your standard grades and then they also incorporated SEL somehow in there. It was a special report card. You said some districts are utilizing this report card.
Standards-based grading.
Standards-based grading. So
Correct.
is there, so it's marking, they get their work done, do parents know how to interpret the way those are graded, or is it just standard, or they do it or they don't do it?
Oh no, most definitely. All the districts I worked with that went to standard-based grading, and this is just a form of grading. If you want, I have a website that'll help explain it all. If you'd like, I can certainly share that as to what that is. Not every district does it. I think there's probably 30% in the state of Illinois, maybe more. It's been a while since I looked, that do standards-based grading. Usually it's done when there's a full year of investigations with parents on board with this. They always have to create a team to review what this would be, parents on board. Their report cards have an instruction guide that goes with it. In other words, this is why this looks this way. This is where the data comes from this, and so forth. Very detailed on what to look for in that if it is a standards-based grading. You will know if you're standards-based grading, just to put that out there. Standards-based gradings don't go on A, B, C, and D, or Fs. Okay, they go on 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. One, if you got a 1 in ELA or reading for kindergarten, let's say, if you got a 1, that means you're developing the skill. Doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're developing the skill to read. When you get a 2, you're really doing well with it. Okay, when you get a 3, you have mastered it. When you get a 3, you are now reading at your grade level. If you get a 4, you're overachieving. Okay, so that's how standards-based grading works, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, it always makes parents at the very beginning, especially we're used to getting A's and B's back in the day. And the first report card you get in the first 9 weeks, there's a lot of 1s and 2s. Because if you're in second grade, you're just learning second grade. And you'll be in 1s and 2s because you're learning. Nobody gets a 4 in the first 9 weeks. Well, okay, some could, yeah. But that's standards-based grading. So if your report cards for your kids come with 1, 2, 3s, and 4s, instead of A, B, C's, and D's, you're in a standard-based grading district.
So and one of the things, it's also always talked about is local control. And this 1, 2, 3, and 4, do each school district determine their own SEL goals, or is it the standard that you laid out in the beginning? I'm not quite.
The SEL
who and how is that? Who and how is that focus of the school's SEL goals determined?
Okay. So there should be an SEL team within the district, a group of teachers, students. If we're middle school and high school, they should have students on there as well, and parents within the district can be part of an SEL team. And if they're looking at a curriculum or a program to implement, there needs to be all of those players in the team to look at what the needs are in the school. The schools can look at several things to find out what their needs are. I've gone into schools where they say we'd like some SEL training, and I go, okay, let's narrow that down. And we will look at behavior records. We look at attendance records. We will look at a survey of the teachers of what they have going on in their classrooms and things like that, and identify and get it down to goal 1, 2, or 3. Where are they seeing the most struggles? And then we may determine some professional development in that area. So that's how a team needs to come together as well and look at data for the school, what's going on, the whole school, not just academics, but that's a piece of it. And usually almost every district, especially if they're looking to implement any specific program, has an SEL team for at least a year before they implement something.
This is a very good question that just popped up. Thank you, Jennifer. If a school district has gone to the standard-based grading and colleges are looking for a GPA grade, how does that translate? I mean, they're not looking to see if your kid got a 4 in math.
Right. Well, actually, for high school, they can transfer the transcripts to meet the needs of that. However, there's lots of research, and I can dig it up for you, but you can look for it as to what the colleges are looking for nowadays. Not all of them are even asking for the SATs anymore. They want to know what your life was in high school, what your academic skills were, and so forth. And I've heard from many of them at a couple of national conferences, they like some of the standard report card ones because it tells me the type of a person that child is, not just how their academic abilities are. Sometimes you may get somebody that gets that 4.2, 4.5 GPA, but they were always late to class. They never were prepared. They just tested really well. The standards-based report card shows a little bit more into the student on their social skills. So they can convert that from the standards-based to GPA. 4 or 5 years ago, I know that the sports association within the state made an entire structure that if you're a standards-based high school, you know, that D list that can't play because they're on the D list. So they have an entire structure now if your high school is standards-based reporting as to whether that is. And that came about 4 or 5 years ago.
Because I would think obviously a child playing the fall sports may not have anything but a 1 in certain
Correct.
courses.
Correct. But they look at that social piece as well. So they have a whole structure in there, and it's on the sports IHSA. Has been a couple of years since I've worked with them.
So if a school is not using the standard-based grading, there is really nothing that is being reported out officially, like on a report card, etc., regarding SEL.
No, not individual student SEL. No.
Maybe something in the comments that the teacher might write on the report card, etc., but nothing that is actually like listed there with a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or an A, B, C, or D.
No.
And you know, I think it's also valuable to say that this whole arena of SEL is a topic that parents can discuss with the teacher during conferences, and that is the perfect time. So, you know, while maybe it isn't broken down in very granular detail on part of the report card, it's part of what you ask that teacher to share of her or his observations.
Yeah, it's that conversation. How is my child getting along with others? How are they managing their emotions when they're upset or when they struggle? How can I help support that at home? What are they struggling most with in the classroom? That's part of that parent-teacher conversation.
Would either of you have a recommendation for a school district that is currently not using standard-based grading of how a parent could approach or provide data to support converting the school district to?
Can I put a website in the chat box?
You sure could. That would be great.
Okay, so
And if you could send it,
I'm gonna look it up here.
okay, and if you could send it to me in an email, I could include it in the wrap up for tomorrow.
Okay. I will find it as we're still chatting.
So Jennifer, thanks for your follow-up. I think your comment is correctly. So what the standard-based report card has done for college is it's also given the colleges an ability to look at the street smarts, not just necessarily all the book smarts, like how well-rounded is this person, and which could also then assess how well they could, how successful they could be in the college arena, because we know some kids get in there and they could be the great testers, but they can't handle the individuality yet of the college life. A couple other comments out here. So what is the scale that is meeting the standard, approaching the standard, areas of concern, etc.? I guess that's probably something that's showing up on a report card somewhere.
Standards-based grading.
Is that what they're actually,
Yes,
they're labeling it? Okay.
yes, that's the standards-based grading.
And then another comment that was out there is regarding the 5 essentials. So one of the issues with trying to go there to see what your community, your school community looks like is if they don't have at least 20% participation, ISB doesn't report anything out on that.
Well, no, it's not ISB doesn't report it.
Oh,
It's the fact that it can't generate,
Right.
can't generate anything.
Okay.
So, I'd love to jump in on this one because it's something I
Sure.
dealt with too in one of the districts I worked with. It is paramount that the district have good communication with the parents and a strong ability to communicate with them the value of this data collection that's going on. And even through the process, when the portal is open for parents then to participate in the 5 essentials or any of these, you need to keep reminding them that we need to hear from you. We need your input. It's not just a one and done, post it on the website and hope that some people respond. It's a steady sequence of reminders to parents that they please submit their input so that we can actually use this data. And this is true not just of 5 essentials. The comprehensive school climate inventory is another one that the more data you've got, the more valuable it is. That's the bottom line.
Definitely.
So we're a little after 8 o'clock, so I would like to wrap this up. I would like to share a couple things real quick. Number one, as I said at the beginning of this call, but some of you hadn't got on quite yet, we will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to all of these slides. So you'll have all those words that were on those slides, which was a lot of words on a few of them, at your disposal. We also recorded this, we recorded tonight's call because we thought it was so important, and it is something that you can share out with other parents that you know in your community, in your PTA, to help get them some insight, plus the link to the stage, the links to the downloads for all the different stages for, I think it was stage A through J, you stated, Lisa.
Yep.
That will be there, so you can link to that and you can see how all of that is useful, how you can read through and see, kind of assess your own child a little bit about where you think they are. You might want to use that again for teacher-parent meetings to say, I kind of assess my child here. What are you seeing in the classroom? How do you look at them? So those opportunities are all there. So we will be sharing that out. And so that is a great opportunity to share that and get this information out. Either, send them the link to the recording when it's available, or to download those and share them at your next PTA meeting, etc. like that. So Lisa and Jeanne, I will also be sending out your guys' emails tomorrow. So if you come up with a question that wasn't answered tonight, please feel free to shoot them an email. They'll be happy to answer your questions. I hope we got to them all.
Yeah, I will send you the link for the website for standard-based reporting. I will send it to you, Carolyn. They didn't renew the thing, so I'm going to send I'll send you the link to it.
That would be wonderful, and we will get that out to everybody also. So saying that, I want to thank everybody for participating, but mostly I want to thank Lisa and Jeanne for all your great information. Just more, every time I listen to, and I've watched several presentations from Lisa over the years, and tonight was the first time I met Jeanne, but now I'm going to watch everything you do too, Jeanne, because the two of you provided so much great information for all of the people on this call and all the people that will watch these recordings going forward. So I'd like to thank you for taking time out of this evening to share with Illinois PTA, and I'd like to thank everybody else who got on and listened and all the great questions that came through. Thank you all for joining us also. So have a great evening. Try to stay cool. The cooler weather is coming in a few days, but this is just a prelude to getting us all ready for the summer temperatures in the Midwest. So good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.